Have you ever watched a movie about alternate dimensions and thought, man, I wish I could actually go to one of those?
That's I think we've all been there.
Right, like that scene in Interstellar with the Tesseract blew my mind. But then I always wonder, how much of that stuff is actual science and how much is just, Hollywood making things up?
It's a question that has fascinated physicists and philosophers for centuries. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today, using this book as our guide, exploring dimensions you never thought existed, from science to the impossible.
I was checking this book out, and I gotta say, it's pretty cool how they categorize all these mind-boggling ideas about dimensions, from the scientifically plausible to the completely out there.
Right, it's like a roadmap to the multiverse.
Totally. And they even call the most scientifically sound category C tier, plausible within known science.
Which might seem a little backwards, starting with the C list.
Yeah, but I think it's smart, eases you into the really out there stuff. Plus, it's mind-blowing enough on its own. Parallel universes, wormholes, that's all C tier.
Exactly. And that's where we begin our deep dive today, those ideas that, while still pushing the boundaries of our understanding, have at least one foot planted in the world of established physics. Take the concept of parallel universes. It's basically a staple of science fiction.
Totally.
But did you know that it actually arises from a serious interpretation of quantum mechanics? Yeah, it's true. Many worlds interpretation, as it's called, basically says that every time a quantum measurement is made, every time a particle could go one way or another, both outcomes actually occur, just in separate diverging universes.
Whoa, okay, so you're saying there's a universe out there where I actually ate that entire chocolate cake last night.
That's one way to think about it. It's imagine you're choosing between two delicious desserts, but instead of just picking one, you get to experience both, just in different realities.
That's both terrifying and amazing. But how does this idea even hold up, scientifically?
Well, it's really important to remember that the many worlds interpretation is just that, an interpretation. It's one attempt to explain some of the strange and, let's face it, really counterintuitive aspects of quantum mechanics.
Okay, so it's not like physicists have it all figured out just yet.
Not even close. One of the major challenges is that right now it's impossible to actually observe or interact with these hypothetical parallel universes.
So we can't just hop on a spaceship and go check them out.
Not quite. It would be like trying to prove the existence of a mirror universe that perfectly reflects our own. It's really intriguing to think about, but incredibly difficult to actually test.
Okay, so maybe no interdimensional vacations for now, but what about the idea of a multiverse? You know, a whole bunch of universes, maybe even infinite, each with its own unique, properties and laws of physics.
You're talking about a concept that truly stretches the limits of our imagination. The multiverse stems from a theory called cosmic inflation. And that theory basically suggests that in the first tiny fraction of a second after the Big Bang, the universe expanded insanely fast, unbelievably fast. And that potentially created a whole bunch of bubble universes in the process.
So our universe is just one bubble in a cosmic bubble bath of universes.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
I like it.
But again, while this idea helps explain some of the things that our current models struggle with, like why the background radiation of the universe is so remarkably uniform, direct evidence for the multiverse is still missing.
So it's we have these really cool ideas based on some pretty solid physics and math.
Yeah.
But actually proving them, that's a whole other story.
You've hit the nail on the head. It makes you wonder, are we just limited by our current technology? Or is there something fundamentally preventing us from peeking behind the curtain of our reality?
That is a really good question. And it leads us to another C-tier concept, dimensional travel, which in science fiction usually involves these things called wormholes, shortcuts through space-time, right?
That's right. And you know what? Wormholes are a staple of science fiction for a reason. The idea of taking a shortcut through the fabric of space-time is just, well, undeniably captivating.
Wormholes, right. Aren't those those cosmic tunnels you always see in sci-fi movies?
Exactly. They're like shortcuts, right?
Yeah.
Through space-time.
Yeah. Jump in one end and pop out on the other side of a galaxy, or even in a different time period. But how much of that is actually, based on real science?
Well, it's funny you should mention that wormholes are a science fiction staple for a reason. And believe it or not, the idea itself isn't totally out there. You can actually find it as a theoretical possibility in Einstein's theory of general relativity.
Wait, really? So Einstein's equations actually allow for the possibility of wormholes?
In a way, yeah. You see, Einstein described gravity as a curvature of space-time, right? And that curvature is caused by mass and energy. So imagine like folding a piece of paper.
Okay, like folding it in half.
Yeah, exactly. You create a shortcut between 2 points that would normally be far apart. That's the basic idea behind a wormhole.
So theoretically, you could step into a wormhole here and pop out near a black hole light years away.
Theoretically, yes. But, and this is a big but, the reality is a lot more complicated and probably way less glamorous. For one thing, even if we could find or create a wormhole, which is a huge if, the physics involved suggest they'd be crazy unstable.
Unstable how? Like, they could collapse.
Exactly. Think of it like trying to hold open a rip in a wet paper towel.
Oh, yeah. It would just, like, disintegrate immediately.
Pretty much there. And that's what physicists think would happen to a wormhole. It
Yeah.
would collapse super fast, probably taking anything inside it along with it.
Yeesh. Okay, so maybe wormhole travel is best left to the movies for now.
For now, probably.
But it's still pretty cool to think about, bending and folding space-time. It makes you wonder, what else is out there that we haven't even considered yet?
And that's a perfect transition because that's where we're headed next. We're moving beyond the C tier and diving into the B tier, grounded in hypothetical science.
B tier. Okay, so we're getting even more speculative, but still rooted in some kind of theoretical framework.
Exactly. We're going to be exploring some truly mind-blowing concepts like the possibility of extra-dimensional beings and this wild idea called brain cosmology.
Extra-dimensional beings. Okay, now we're talking. Like creatures from other dimensions?
You got it. And brain cosmology. Just imagine. What if our universe, with its 3 spatial dimensions and 1 time dimension, is just one of many brains floating in a higher dimensional space?
Whoa, that's a lot to process. So it's like our universe is just one slice of a much bigger multi-dimensional reality.
Exactly. And while it might sound like something straight out of Doctor Who, brain cosmology is actually rooted in string theory, which is a theoretical framework that tries to reconcile quantum mechanics and general relativity.
String theory, right. That's the one where everything is made of tiny vibrating strings of energy.
You got it. And here's the key. These strings could be vibrating in more than just the 3 dimensions we experience. Some versions of string theory say there could be 10 or even 11 dimensions.
11 dimensions. Okay, now my head is spinning.
It's wild, right? So imagine those extra dimensions curled up so tiny we can't even perceive them. That's where brains come in. Picture them like sheets or membranes floating around in this higher dimensional space. And our universe, just one of those brains.
So we're all stuck on this one brain, completely unaware of the vastness surrounding us. Kind of like ants crawling on a piece of paper, unaware of the rest of the room.
That's a great analogy. It really puts it into perspective.
It's kind of humbling and a little terrifying at the same time.
I know, right? And here's a really interesting part. These brains could actually interact with each other. Some physicists even think that collisions between brains could have caused events like the Big Bang.
So our entire universe could have been created by a cosmic fender bender.
Now that's an origin story. But as wild as it sounds, the math behind brain cosmology is surprisingly elegant. It gives us this little peek into a reality that's way more complex and interconnected than we ever imagined.
Okay, so brains are pretty wild, but what about these extra-dimensional beings you mentioned? What's that all about?
All right, get ready, because this one is a real mind bender. What if, and stick with me here, what if there are beings out there existing in dimensions beyond our perception who are maybe even interacting with our reality in ways we just can't grasp?
Okay, now that is some X-Files stuff right there.
Right. It's easy to dismiss it as pure fantasy, but it's important to think about the limitations of our own senses. Think about it like this. Imagine a 2-dimensional being living on a flat plane. All it can perceive is length and width. Now, if a 3-dimensional object, say a sphere, passes through its plane, all that 2D being would see is a series of changing shapes, right? Like a circle that grows and then shrinks. It wouldn't be able to grasp the concept of a sphere because it's stuck in 2 dimensions.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this. We could be just as oblivious to beings in higher dimensions as that 2D being is to the sphere.
Precisely. It's a mind-blowing thought. And it's been a question that has puzzled physicists and philosophers for centuries. Could there be a whole other world existing right here, right now, that we are completely blind to?
And the craziest part is, we have no way of knowing for sure.
Exactly. And that sense of wonder, the unknown, is what makes these B-tier concepts so fascinating. But hold on tight, because we're about to dive even deeper into the realm of the hypothetical as we move from the B tier to the A tier. Speculative, but imaginable.
A tier. Oh boy, things are about to get even weirder, aren't they?
You have no idea. Get ready for alternate timelines and the simulation hypothesis.
A tier. Speculative but imaginable. It's like we're not even in Kansas anymore, are we?
Laughs. Not even close. But that's part of the fun, right? Exploring those what-ifs that really push the boundaries of imagination.
Totally. And the A tier definitely delivers on that front. We're talking alternate timelines, the simulation hypothesis. This is where things get really juicy.
It really is. So where do you want to start? Alternate timelines. That's always a fun one.
Oh, yeah. Like, what if every decision we make, every little choice, doesn't just send us down a different path, but creates a whole new timeline, a whole new reality branching off from ours?
Exactly. It's like those choose-your-own-adventure books we read as kids, but on a universal scale. Instead of one single timeline, imagine a multiverse of them all branching out, each one representing a different set of choices and outcomes.
So, like, there are countless versions of me out there living out every possible version of my life. Whoa, that's a lot to wrap my head around.
It really is. And it gets even more mind-boggling when you think about the philosophical implications. If every possible outcome already exists somewhere in the multiverse, does that mean free will is just an illusion?
Right. Like, are we really in control of our destinies, or is everything already predetermined in some grand cosmic script?
Exactly. It's a question that has kept philosophers busy for centuries, and there's no easy answer. But just thinking about these possibilities can really shake up our understanding of reality, you know?
Totally. Okay, so alternate timelines are mind-blowing enough, but then there's the simulation hypothesis. That one always freaks me out a little.
It's definitely a trip. The idea that our reality, everything we know, might just be a super advanced computer program that's enough to make anyone question everything.
Right. It's like straight out of the Matrix. Are we all just plugged into some kind of cosmic computer, living out our lives in a digital world? And if so, who created it? What's the point?
Those are the million-dollar questions. And while we don't have any definitive answers, it is interesting to think about how the rapid advancements in our own technology, particularly things like virtual reality and AI, make the simulation hypothesis seem a little less far-fetched.
I know, right? Like, our video games are getting so real these days, it's not that hard to imagine a civilization way more advanced than us creating a simulation indistinguishable from actual reality.
Exactly. And that brings up even more questions like, if we are in a simulation, are there glitches?
Yeah.
Ways to hack the system, bend the rules.
Whoa. Okay, now my brain is officially fried. Sorry. But hey, even if the simulation hypothesis turns out to be just a fun thought experiment, it highlights how much we still don't understand about our universe. And the possibilities, well, they're pretty much endless.
Totally. But we haven't reached the end of the book yet, have we? We've gone from C tier to B tier to A tier, but there's one last category, isn't there? The S tier. What does that even stand for?
The S tier. Theoretically possible, but unfalsifiable. It's where we dive into the realm of ideas so far out there that they're practically impossible to test or prove using science as we know it.
So basically, we're entering a territory where science and imagination blur together, and we have no way to tell what's real and what's not. Exactly. It's the ultimate mystery box. We've gone from parallel universes and wormholes to extra-dimensional beings, and the idea that we're living in a giant cosmic simulation. We've really stretched our imaginations, dug into some wild scientific theories, and maybe, just maybe, opened our minds to possibilities we never even dreamed of before.
I know I have. And that's what I love about this stuff. It makes you realize that no matter how much we think we know about the universe, there's always so much more out there to explore and discover.
Couldn't have said it better myself.